Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the Mech Terran mastermind, the Admiral in the red. It's GuMiho. Facing off against the former world champion Zerg in the blue, we have the Executioner. It's Rogue. In a best-of-3 Terran versus Zerg showdown as part of Wardi's Winter Championship. And if you enjoy Winter Championships, it'd be incredible before we get started if you could smash that like button or maybe even subscribe. Help me count the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,777 likes on this video, on this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As the Reaper is driven away by the first queen, and we'll see that Rogue slipped a drone and found his third base relatively early on, but GuMiho, not to be put out too far, has a third command center already in production in his main. We're on one of the most macro-oriented maps, but two Zerglings slipped by, a single Marine. The SCV pulled off, which is quite a bold move, but the SCV itself, the citizen's arrest, he is delaying his command center. No, GuMiho. Gooby, no! Well, the SCV had a taste of Zerg blood and wanted some more, but it's going to have to wait after it finishes its work project here to get some more of it. The command center will finish after a slight delay, but the SCV successfully, well, the Zergling corralled into the main where somehow it got in, but it will see exactly what it expected to. It is important to get that information. It is nice to have the knowledge that they're going for the Destiny Cloudfist build, or the Barracks, the Factory, the Starport for boring people. But it is also not something GuMiho probably should have let happen, because even though Rogue likely would have expected this, it doesn't mean you need to give that away. There's a chance that he has another Barracks, or even another Factory, which is definitely not out of the question for GuMiho. He gets a little bit more mechanically inclined, and he just runs by, drives by even with the first two Hellions, and one of them, gotta be careful not to run over anything too substantial, but already 2 kills. The queens are, this is private property. Not now, Brenda. I don't. The Reaper at the third base, somehow 1 Hellion survived. Every single drone pulled off the line, but we're not done. Evo chamber on the way, but that doesn't block anything out. Throws a grenade, boxes out, and somehow GuMiho is able to do the full world tour with the first 2 Hellions. He gets out with 1. He gets several kills. A pretty significant delay on the mining. And overall, most of the damage is superficial, but emotionally, much more substantial. Well, why not? The Viking, no kills. Very importantly, no kills, including on the Overlord that was hanging out next to GuMiho's main, which means it'll come in and spot that Cloaked Banshees are indeed on the way. But he went for a Viking before those Banshees, so they will be delayed. But knocking out several Overlords early is certainly not going to make things easier. Is that a... I think that walls off Queens. I think Rogue made a mistake here. Hero, is that you? Or maybe I'm just a fool. Both things are possible. You know what? Nice little tight fit there, but... Hellions running by. The Roaches are out, but Sloaches are not always the right... Oh, more! But wait, there's more! And he gets into the natural. Well, it's certainly not a wall, as the Hellions get in, and more drones getting charbroiled early on here than that first mission, or that last mission in the campaign. 8 drones dead to the double run by. Every single Hellion was lost, but GuMiho is already well on his way to taking us to McDonald's. A double armory. 2 more factories on the way. He's going to try to mech it happen or die trying. And finally, that Overlord. Did it get that key information? No. He may suspect it very strongly, but he doesn't know for a fact that it's going to be mech. Rogue, of course, already has Roaches on the way. Is that a Raven? Oh, GuMiho. Bringing out... He's got Banshee speed in production, not willing to give up that sort of air control, at least air support. He's got 2 more factories. I doubt it'll end there. +1 mech weapons and armor in production. Rogue, layers completed, Hydralus Den. Roach, Warren already upgrading speed. He's going to have the old school composition of Roach Hydra. And maybe if enough Banshees show up, Corruptors will be added in too. And then we're going to be very nostalgic with the Roach Hydra Corruptor comp that both these players remember from an uncomfortably large amount of years ago. Like 14. Oh, wow. Oof. Shouldn't have said it out loud. Well, not the first time. Anyways, Raven on its way out. Maybe Clem inspired by some of GuMiho's plays recently, but the Raven actually to be used for clearing creep. Especially when you start out with a Tech Lab starport. He made a Raven after 2 Banshees and is back to Banshees. So GuMiho actually using the starport as part of a alternative unit composition, as opposed to just something to pop out some early harass units and then spam medevacs for the rest of the game. A changeling, GuMiho should know, because flesh is weak and malleable. And that's why he doesn't have any in his composition. I guess technically Hellbats, but that doesn't really... I don't know what's going on there. 2 Thors! Oh, he's gonna do a hammer drop. Or he just likes Thors. Wait a second. He might suspect Mutas. Because there's actually no anti-air at all right now. If he doesn't have Thors, he doesn't have Cyclones here. So, with no anti-air besides potentially missile turrets, the Thors are actually a critical part of things. It is Roach Hydra, so Mass Thor not going to be nearly as effective, but mixing it into the composition. A couple siege techs, anti-armor missile to Dorito does this could be actually critical in this sort of fight. Auto turret to help hold the front line. Banshees come back. A bit late on the cloak. Pushed away. Overseer overhead. Viking slowly working on it. A relatively slow-moving fight despite the speed of all the units involved. Whips out another round and a double kill on the Banshees and the tank. A good pick-off. Almost gets the Raven. The Planetary has been finishing mid-fight, and it may actually save GuMiho. The Thors are here, and they blast through the rest. The fact that GuMiho committed to finishing the Planetary. All these units in the red, and I'm not talking about their team color right now, but they're not quite dead yet. The Planetary holds. GuMiho doesn't really lose any key starport units. He only lost really... 2 siege tanks, 9 Hellbats, and a couple Banshees. It could have been much worse. In fact, he killed 19 Hydralisks and 3 Ravagers. That was actually quite a costly exchange for Rogue. And this is all well before a hive complete. He's not going to have Vipers. He's not going to have Lurkers with range or those top-tier upgrades. Meanwhile, GuMiho's working on his 2-2. I think GuMiho gets the better end of that exchange and might be able to turn the tables soon. With 3 more factories on the way. He's putting a reactor on his starport, as Vikings in the newest patch are actually cheaper on minerals, 25 less. Almost was 25 gas, but enough. That was a little ridiculous. More command centers, and the Banshee Raven Creep Clearing Squad, which, gonna have to come up with a better name for that. How about Thunder Eagles? Sounds like something that people who drive Banshees would come up with. Anyways, 3 Vipers on the way. And GuMiho without a Ghost Academy in sight nor the production tab. Some slow lings, speed is about to complete. Anything to draw some of the fire of the siege tanks, but the Hellions have been added back in. The composition, the heavy metal from GuMiho. His bread and buttered biscuit here. And Rogue is no stranger to fighting against it, but a head-on engagement with this fight requires Blinding Cloud. Because if they can see you, they will kill you. This army is an order of magnitude stronger than the Zerg ground units in a direct engagement. Unless there's a full surround and upgrade advantage, or some space magic tomfoolery via the Vipers, GuMiho will just be grinding down the Zerg. So, the Vipers slurping out what energy they can, realizing, thank you, Rogue, realizing that consuming the hatchery that's about to be in siege tank range is probably not the ideal move. But look at that spread! I can't believe it's not butter. Oh, wow. The siege, Vipers from the right side, Blinding Cloud. But the siege tanks can't be abducted anymore. The Blinding Cloud isn't enough to really stop this. The Thors are taken out. A few more on the low ground. Reinforcements to the front. Raven at the back. Auto turrets join in. And GuMiho just smashes the army composition. takes a bit of a bloody nose, loses a few tanks, but continues to leapfrog forward as Rogue rebuilds and refills and tries to find some other option for dealing with this unit composition. All 3 Vipers survived. They're recharging their energy, I assume, somewhere, as more siege tanks come up and more queens are obliterated. The Hellion count has been reduced dramatically. Big blinding cloud opportunity. The Thor's in a mediocre position. More blinding clouds on the back line. Ravagers breaking through. Another Thor ripped apart. The ankles of it easily taken down by the Zerglings. And the siege tanks are not enough. There's not enough to fill it in. And Rogue, with the refill in the next 200 supply, is able to dismantle the siege line. But the Banshees survived. 15, 7 kills and counting. And almost all those kills are on Roaches, Ravagers, and Hydras. The Banshees continuing to pay for themselves. The Raven has survived throughout all of this. And GuMiho has yet to give up this position despite losing such a critical mass of tanks. The production, the industrial revolution that has come together. 8 factories and a starport with a reactor. He's building 3 more orbital commands. GuMiho is not going to give up. He's not going to surrender. Rogue refilling. Did he lose? He lost 1 Viper. The blinding clouds in the second round much more important because it is a bit of a brittle composition. If you don't have the Hellbats to fill in, then a well-controlled fight will go to the Zerg. With the Vipers able to remove about half the DPS of the entire composition. But here we go. Third time may be the charm. But for who? For whom? For whomst? No. I don't. The Zergling counter will be met with some significant border control, and GuMiho actually backing off with a lot of his army. Maybe too much. I don't think you need 5 siege tanks, 2 Banshees, and 22 Hellbats in order to deal with this, but a disproportionate response may intimidate him into submission. Doubt it. But the command center counts 6 orbital commands. 3-3 is on the way for both sides. GuMiho with mech weapons and armor at almost exactly the same time as Zerg upgrades. Rogue has 87 drones, which means his unit composition is a little bit less solid, a little bit less army supply. The army value is very much in favor of GuMiho. No, the Raven gets Edgar Allan Poe'd by a spore crawler of all things. Bit of an unfortunate start. The tanks remain unsieged, so they can wait out the blinding clouds. The Vipers use all their clouds. GuMiho sieges on the back line of the fight. But this allowed Rogue to break through the front. The Roaches and Ravagers grinding through the siege line. There's still 4 tanks at the back, though. That's a lot of damage, and the Banshees are still going to work. 15 and 24 kills, taking down the last Ravager. And the fact that Rogue has not dealt with these Banshees is what may deal him a really terrible hand now at this stage of the game. The Banshees are still going to work. The Queens, get off my creep! And finally, one of the Banshees is taken down. And the Hellbats are burninating across the mineral line. GuMiho is able to keep the pressure on the Zerg. And so far, Rogue has done a whole lot of not losing. But winning is something that happens maybe after you break these siege tanks for the second time. Rogue, despite the economy, he's ended up losing 7,000 more resources. He's barely mined any more than GuMiho, and even less gas. Despite losing... Wow, he's actually lost more gas by 2,000. That's pretty wild in this sort of composition, but Hydra's joining into the comp. Not as good against the siege tanks as Ravagers, potentially, but they also don't take as much damage. The Hellion's not in front. Where is the filler? Where's the front line? The siege tank's left alone, and the artillery is picked apart. GuMiho again. He split off his Hellions, and he lost a lot of them in the last fight, and he didn't reinforce, and we see the difference there. If the Zerg can close the distance on the siege tanks, then clearly they're able to pick it apart. Siege tanks not so good at direct confrontation like many Terrans themselves. The Thor pirouetting out of the corrosive bile, and Rogue retains the position. He clears the midfield, and now takes the supply lead solidly for maybe the first time this game. GuMiho with an iron bank of orbital commands. He's going on double digits. Hellion still running by, just keeping the attention dragged back. But Rogue has managed to reclaim his half the map. and rebuild much of his army. He has 25 larvae. I'm not sure what he's waiting for. Whoa! Sir Richard and his band of swarm host brethren. 12 swarm hosts in production, and he just broke the siege tanks. He just took down the Thors. He's done exactly what he needed to do to make GuMiho vulnerable to this sort of composition. In a maxed out versus maxed out army, swarm hosts are not so great because they usually have a critical mass of units that can invalidate almost an infinite amount of locusts. But because GuMiho is stretched quite thinly here, he doesn't have the army supply, and he doesn't really have much anti-swarm host directly, which would be Banshees ideally, or battle cruisers. And Rogue is waiting. He's waiting with the swarm host. He's not showing him right off the bat, though he should be showing him soon as he's nearly maxed out. I want to point out that he has only attack upgrades. I think because Mech is so strong that armor upgrades are almost irrelevant because you're going to get hit almost as hard no matter what. So the idea is doing as much damage as possible in the little time your units have. GuMiho comes back. The Locusts drop down. The Hellbats. He gets one tank. Actually, GuMiho got one tank, technically, with friendly fire. Rogue killed one Hellbat. Well, that was certainly underwhelming when it comes to the first wave of Swarm Hosts. And now GuMiho knows what he's dealing with. And he knows that time is not on his side, as the Swarm Hosts will find more and more success. Brenda! I'm walking here. I don't... Yeah, we see that. Okay, the Roaches and Ravagers trying to split off the front of the siege tanks, but there's 17 of them with maximum upgrades. The Swarm Hosts, a good wave coming through, could be spread on the siege tanks even more than they are themselves. And 5 or 6 tanks are taken down almost immediately. Only one tank sieged up. The Locusts on creep are pretty quick, but now timeout. And Ravagers, he's just using tanks in siege mode. I mean, out of siege mode, as technically they have more DPS. The Ravagers underestimating the capability of the individual tanks, and now multi-prong Liberator backstabs, starting to put some pressure on the economy. Rogue is actually supply blocked. Odd to see Rogue without enough supply at 200, considering this is extreme late-game Terran versus Zerg. But a Knight is slightly out of sensor tower range in the back left corner. GuMiho, he lost his Banshees, the heroes they were a while ago. The creep's starting to recede. Oh, another round of Corrosive Bell, but just dodging away. Those plus 3/3 siege tanks don't go down quickly. And reinforcements on the way for either side. The Swarm Host flinging out a wave that will take out the base over like the 10 o'clock position. But the concave of tanks just blasting through, stutter stepping the tanks forward, such as it is. Vikings hit the deck, and the whole Nordic composition is coming together. Thors and Vikings and Hellbats blasting through. 18 SCVs in the planetary went down, but he has several more orbital commands to replace it with. And eventually Rogue has to, well, in most cases, in most scenarios, in most universes, Rogue will have to engage this army, unless he executes the most dramatic and well-timed base trade almost ever. But GuMiho has adapted with a mobile mech composition, though it's very hard to dodge corrosive biles in that magnitude. GuMiho still manages to sidestep for the most part. The Thor's badly bruised, but not yet taken down. This base getting actually exploderated by the amount of combined DPS of the Terran army. The damage on either side is excruciating. 40,000 damage over the last 3 minutes. 33 Hellbats, 4 siege tanks. Wow. Wait, 10 sieged up siege tanks. All right, I was like, how did he only kill 4? Apparently they're counted differently. Sieges up every tank here. Just testing it out. Yep, it works. Need some repair if possible, as about half these siege tanks are in need of some maintenance, but Again, the tanks unsiege to mitigate the amount of friendly fire that the Locust can do. He just uses the Locust as a front line. Corrosive Bile will scatter throughout, but only pick off 1 or 2 tanks. Zerglings on the left side where the mules have already dropped. Another wave! Not quite enough. GuMiho's starting to fall apart here. A tank drop! Drops out 2 tanks, which get through a hatchery pretty quickly. And GuMiho, 5 Cyclones on the way. An interesting choice at this stage. The compositions have been distilled down into almost their purest form. It's near GuMiho juggling siege tanks against technically siege tanks attack instantly, and Ravagers and Roaches clearly do not. Meanwhile, the rest of the army, a wave of he's potentially trying to draw it out here. Corrosive Bows, he abandons the tanks, which is a little embarrassing. The Locust caught behind, but the Concave of Terran, he spreads it back. The Hellions coming up to draw some fire. The Cyclones swinging in. They do have Magfield Accelerator done. And it's the Terran army outflanking the Zerg in a dramatic role reversal that I can definitely get behind. So, another queen gonna be sniped off. The drones transferring. They didn't get the memo, and they're not gonna be getting much at all at the end of this. GuMiho still powering forward despite the supply deficit. But you gotta remember, a big chunk of rogue supplies in those swarm hosts, which are only temporarily useful. 14, 15 drones dead. Rogue has literally no gas. He needs this wave to do critical damage, and so far it will. The Locusts are grinding through the tanks, but it's thinned out too quickly. And Rogue, with a Roach and 12 Lings in production, is certainly not the sort of economy he needs, but some Lings on the back line. There's creep here. This is the weirdest looking base. Somehow GuMiho managed to land it despite the creep behind it. Oh, it's a little off-center. Cyclones and Hellions. The usual composition we start with will be the one we end with. As round and round the tech tree we go. Rogue is desperate. Barely built. Well, he has no gas. Metaphorically and literally. He's barely modding. Has the left side now. There's a command center. Not landed. There's no reason it can't be, besides GuMiho hasn't tried it yet. The Cyclones and Hellions, much more suited for dealing with a very mobile swarm host. There's still a whole bunch of siege tanks and a single Thor with 25 kills. A tank with 29. Racking it up now. But Rogue has maintained a similar amount of resources lost. It's just GuMiho has been so active on the field. A real brawl between flesh and metal here. Which, I don't think we're allowed any copyright infringement in the grim dark of the far future. But that's the real dystopian part. Copyright laws. Well. GuMiho picking apart the army. He's gonna take out the last mining base. And what does Rogue have left? Half a wave of Locusts and 2 Gs. GuMiho making it happen in game number 1. Rogue doing a great job adapting to the composition. I really thought the swarm hosts were the call. But GuMiho knows that nobody picks up calls anymore in current year as a millennial himself. So, the first swarm host wave doing almost nothing and giving GuMiho the time to prepare, I think made the difference. Even though there was a lot more past that. The swarm host had real killing potential. But it didn't end up coming together. GuMiho clearly comfortable. When was the last time you saw 20 tanks out of tank mode, and that was it? He wasn't trying to get them sieged up. He's no Bronze League hero who thinks tanks only work when sieged. But instead, just blasting across. And tanks are ridiculously tanky. I know. That was one of the more dumb things I've said, which is quite a challenge, but tanks are surprisingly hard to take down. Usually the Roach Ravager and Swarm Host composition is so good because the tanks can't run away. Because they're in siege mode. But GuMiho demonstrating both sides of the Terran spectrum there. And most of them are on it somewhere. But siege tanks well spread out through about half the field, and then completely unsieged tank concave. Rogue very close to turning it around. But, close is not close enough. And I think, therefore I am. The Banshees. The Banshees. GuMiho's willingness to just keep building Banshees. And they're such an important part. If he still had the Banshees, well, I don't think Rogue would have gone Swarmhost if there were still Banshees above the field. But speed Banshees are so good at complementing the mech army. It's just most Terrans are so used to their Marine, Marauder, Ghost composition. I literally think Clem doesn't use a Raven most times in most games. Not because he thinks it's a bad idea, but because the muscle memory of controlling these army compositions. A Raven takes subgroup priority. Whenever you select an army with a Raven, the Raven is always first. All right, that's their privilege. And that kind of messes up your muscle memory of exactly what you need to do to execute certain commands. And and as a Terran myself, I'm 1/3 Terran myself. All right. It definitely is difficult to work it in. But GuMiho has a unique scenario where he is the sweatiest Terran player in the world. That's not a metaphor. He has a condition apparently called hyperhidrosis, which has led to him being nicknamed the Towel Terran, because he plays with his mouse, like, in a towel, because his hands are so sweaty. I think he has, like, something that looks like an oven mitt now or something, but he's playing, and I do think, because he's not the fastest player, but sometimes he has just such a different, literally a different lived experience with how to play the game. That is kind of an example of nature versus nurture, I guess, of StarCraft 2 strategies. And GuMiho has always been a little bit, well, possibly by necessity, or possibly by just flexibility, a bit different in his compositions. And that hasn't always worked out for him. But when it works, it really works. And it's great to see something that isn't just copy-pasted and tried to executed 3% worse than Clem. So, enough pontificating. But if you'd like more pontificating, you can like and subscribe. GuMiho here on Mothership, a 3-player... You can't just wait. Well, the SCVs are pulled yet again for the second game in a row. The SCVs will be fighting on the front lines. This time around, though, I don't think it was worth it. 5 SCVs dead, both Marines. GuMiho skipped the Reaper. I believe it was Command Center first or close to it. But 5 SCVs does cut into the early composition. Rogue built a couple extra lings, realizing there was no Reaper at all. And now, a bit of an awkward start. Certainly not... Oh yeah, the 3rd Command Center is almost done. Before the 3rd hatchery of Rogue, to be clear. That's how you know. Rogue didn't go for the quicker 3rd, but instead tried to get this damage. And I think he's going to be happy with the success. The factory floating over. And we'll see. Factory just in purgatory right now. Hanging out. 4 Marines. It looks like he wanted to go for a Marine Hellion combo. And he still will, but he used to too. A bit undercut by the fact that, oh, it's going to be back again, of course. A bit undercut by the lack of units and the early scouting and pressure out of Rogue, but still has some potential. I'm not super optimistic as to the damage he's going to get done with this many queens and still some Zerglings on the feet, but be careful. Gonna slip by. Hellions into the main, and no, it's not happening. This is restricted lair space. You tell him, Lucille. I did. Yeah, good job. Thank you. Sorry, I blacked out for a moment. 2 more factories on the way. As GuMiho looking to put it together yet again. The Hellions clearly a bit distracted, and he's gonna lose a couple right off the bat. Actually, Micro's back. He may be able to extract himself from this situation, or he loses all of the Hellions. Unclear. About 2 Zergling. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, it's getting worse. It started bad, but it's not getting any better. A single Banshee. The Zergling's getting the jump on all this. Queen's dueling with the Marines and winning that fight. And it's a disaster. A series of unfortunate events for Gumi Bro. Which means all the rest of his build is going to be Gumi slow. Oh, Gumi, no. He's going to have to Gumi toe the line between economy and unit production now, as his infrastructure is going to struggle to Gumi grow. I've reached a new Gumi low. Jimmy. Never mind. Spire is on the way. Muta's a real risk. And Rogue, understanding that he just undercut a lot of the harass potential, the Mutas could be a game winner. There are Cyclones on the way, the Hell Clones, a staple composition. In fact, we saw it's so strong we saw it as the end game in the previous game. Sounded dumb, but once again, not a unique experience. It's a strong choice, though. GuMiho might actually just see it here. The Hellions, he caught a glimpse. I think he doubled back, maybe looking for it, or just trying to find a better angle on the Zerglings. But unfortunately, Rogue acutely aware. Is there even an armory? No. GuMiho is actually going for nearly an all-in here, with the most mobile mech composition, quite literally. Hellions, Cyclones, and Banshees with speed. So, thing is, none of this is great against Mass Muta. The Cyclones, technically good, but they don't even have Mag Field Accelerator for that 50% more damage on the lock-ons, which means 9 Mutas. He does have an engineering bay, I think. He's building one right now. And he technically saw the Spire, but for like a split second. And it may not have, because of the weird positioning, it may not have registered as a Spire. He's not building any missile turrets, which feels like he didn't actually register the Spire. Or maybe just timed it out perfectly. Unclear. Yeah, maybe the second thing. Why don't I trust Gumi, bro? Missile turrets in everywhere but the natural, where there's already some softened up SCVs. Huh. Oh no. He decided not to build any missile turrets here, and that's an absolute disaster. He's gonna lose another dozen at least. The Banshee Zerglings already on the third base. The Cyclones fighting directly, as the Cyclones only good against small numbers of Mutas. The Hellions will incinerate the Zerglings, but at 13 SCVs dead. And more in the main. GuMiho several to spare, but he's just gonna fight the clones. Takes down one. And remember, no upgrades at all. Well, the Cyclones are quite good if the Mutas decide to fight directly. So, you know, it could be worse. There's one Bane. None Bane. A Banshee. Finds some kills. The Mutas will come back to knock it out. Gets several drones, actually. 66 to 73 workers. Kind of a surprisingly effective exchange, but Muta, Ling, Baneling. 3 Thors in production. The 1-1 upgrades are already done. Melee attacking Carapace for Rogue. Where, so far, 1-1 just started for GuMiho. He's got building armor on the way for his missile turrets, I expect. He just took out, Rogue just took out one of his own Mutas, but he can take out the missile turret with these. There's no splash damage until the Thors, which means the Mutas can just fly in. Repair's not gonna be enough. It's gonna be painful for the Mutas, but even more painful for everything at the third. GuMiho looking the other way, and the Banelings roll in. Oh no, it's a disaster. GuMiho 30 SCVs, some more Cyclones, 60 supply down. And I don't know if there's any recovering from... GuMiho joins me in not knowing if there's any recovering from that one. Rogue strikes back with a decisive tech timing. before GuMiho was able to stabilize. He dug a little too deep and too greedily with that early harass, and he got stuck on such a low economy. He never brought together the composition. The hardest part of Mech is getting your production, because it costs 100 gas per factory. The startup cost is dramatic. And a big reason why most players kind of shy away from Mech for the most part is there's a lot of opportunity for Zerg to actually hit these timings before you really get your production online. And Rogue demonstrating about as well as we could possibly ask. So Game 3, Winter Madness. Something you should be familiar with by now, but one way or another. GuMiho, again, with the Mech composition. Just that hamstrung start definitely made the difference. Losing 5 SCVs. He got greedy. You don't go for a Reaper. There's nothing to keep... Part of the reason you go for a Reaper is to scout. Another part of the reason is it keeps their Zerglings at home. Alright? Because 6 Zerglings at the wrong time, or the right time, depending on whose perspective we're looking from, can undercut your entire build. So... And that's exactly what happened there. I'm sorry, if he built a missile turret in the second base, I don't know, GuMiho getting stingy. And you gotta cut some corners in order to maintain an edge. But now he got a missile turret in 2 out of 3 bases, but not the natural. And that was... Well, it cost him, clearly. He was gambling that if there were mutas, they'd just come the quickest possible path, which would be that northern path near the top of the map. But sometimes when you gamble, you lose. And gambling against Rogue is certainly a risky endeavor. A player historically willing to do some of the most risky strats. Like, Dark played the villain. Come back to us, Dark. Throughout his career. The final boss, playing the guy who's going to do these crazy strats and with no shame, and he's going to call himself #1 in the world, and sometimes he'll be right. But Rogue, on the other hand, I think is an actual villain. With the mass changeling strategies, the saying Zerg is Imba after winning the world championship, the bullying Maru in GSL. He's still using the Maru portrait, by the way. Every time I load into the game, I see Rogue with Maru's face next to it. He literally took his head and pasted it. Because the last time Rogue and Maru faced in a high-profile match, I don't want to say for sure, but I'm definitely thinking of the GSL, where Maru was favored so heavily, and then Rogue just... He chopped his head off. Mostly with roach timings in like 7 minutes. GuMiho doing some weird push-ups. GuMiho! What is this? Build a Reaper! Well, he's got 3 Marines on the wrong side of the map. Overlord taken down, surprisingly close to home. These are not speedlings, so what am I watching? Is that a second? Okay, GuMiho getting very original here. We'll see. The SCV. We're all turned around right now. There's still a Zergling. Rogue starts a lair at 3 minutes. Madness. Winter Madness. Shout out to Wardi for his Winter Cup as well. Always supporting. And you guys for supporting Wardi through me. I try to use at least half the Patreon on sponsoring tournaments. And Wardis are the highest percentage. I'm not going to say majority. There's more like TKL, Enki, OSC championships coming up. And if any of these acronyms confuse you, don't worry. When it's relevant, I'll explain it. That's my job. Saying the words. Moving on to other words. Lair nearly... He's just going to go mutas again. Mood. GuMiho's going bio, which Rogue should already... He saw the second... He technically didn't see the second barracks, which is interesting. There's a medevac with 4 Marines in it, which... You know, he's probably wishing those were the Hellions now, as there's a good chance he could have popped him out and maybe... In fact, there's only 1 Zergling. If those were Hellions, GuMiho would kill likely a third of Rogue's economy. But it feels like he's thrown off a bit by the topsy-turvy early game. And that opportunity will be missed. Another This is not how you do... This is like a Diamond League medevac build. I'm too scared to walk. I must fly. Ah, you fool. So now he's taken 2 medevacs to do 1 medevac's job. Stim is about to complete. The Spire is nearly completed for Rogue, but he's going to build some more Zerglings just to make sure he can deal with this. Uh-huh. Well, Stim is done. This is, he's flailing. This is what flailing looks like. But the Hellions finding an angle. They do find a spot. The drop in the main, surprising amount of damage. And the dual-pronged attack, and he should see the Spire. Does he see it yet? Well, he's going to see it when the Mutas pop out. And GuMiho, sometimes an awkward attack is much better than no attack at all. This rolls from a very mediocre timing into surprisingly effective, and Rogue is only at 39 drones. Now, will he use the Mutas to hunt the medevac? That's the question. Because if he gives it away even a little bit early... Yeah, he spots it. Alright, he's going to get the medevac. GuMiho's at 50 SCVs. All he needs to do is maintain... He has to... Oh, why do you have a Cyclone? He's adding Cyclones in for anti-Muta. Who does that? And he was like, I'm a bit bio-curious. I don't know. No, that's not enough. You can't just go out there. Can he? The only... Ooh, contaminate on +1 armor. There are missile turrets up. He's gonna fight the Mutas, which is a losing proposition for the most part. Rogue is all in. He needs to do or die here. And it's unclear... Well, the Mutas finding an opportunity. The Zerglings running into the 3rd. Classic bait and switch. The Cyclones are quite good at zoning out small amounts of Mutas. GuMiho, no! Halfway killed his own command center, which is not the ideal move. Classic Hydra versus MMA situation. And I guarantee you GuMiho doesn't realize how committed Rogue is. Rogue has not made a single drone since the earlier aggression. And that means some of these Marines are going to get caught and killed moments before the bunker completes. This is... GuMiho has 8 Marines. That's not enough. The command center was not fully repaired, which means it could be taken down easier by the Mutas. And again, I need to stress that GuMiho just needs to not die. But he doesn't know that. And now the Zerglings are in. Oh, no. +1 armor's about to complete, but it definitely affected this fight, being delayed by about 30 seconds on that contaminate. The boys are yet again pulled to fight Zerglings. Rogue still just building Mutas and Lings. The main base, stop opening the door for the Mutas! Who bribed you? GuMiho flailing as Rogue is concentrated on dealing with anything that comes out of the base. GuMiho just can't get enough Marines. A mule will be dropped to try to save the base. And he keeps biting off more than he can do. Building Vikings to help deal with the Mutas. The Marine count is perpetually about 20% too low. As he has 1-1 upgrades against 0-0. He has more medevacs almost than he has Marines. He didn't rebuild the wall. He's holding the door. And the Mutas have to fight the Marines. They can't go for the medevacs unless there's literally no anti-air. And GuMiho keeps coming outside. Just stay inside! It's dangerous to go out there. He really doesn't. Only now is Rogue finally rebuilding. All he has to do is sit behind his wall like every Terran wants to. But Rogue keeps finding opportunities because GuMiho... And it's a weird... I'm so stressed because GuMiho doesn't know that. GuMiho can't know the drone count that Rogue has been sitting on. We know. And that's why it's so stressful here. GuMiho working off the idea that Rogue's at like 50 or 60 drones on 3 to 4 bases. And honestly, he might play mech so much, he's misjudging it because he's playing bio, which he's perfectly competent at, but maybe not quite as experienced. The intuition isn't... Also, Rogue has a tendency... This is such a commitment. Who just stops building drones? Rogue will. The fact he killed the 3rd command center has put Rogue's chances in a much better position. GuMiho still has all the momentum, though. He has 122 to 100 supply. Baneling speed is not done. But there are banelings at all. The queens we gunned down. The Muta count is so damn high, but the banelings do connect, and that might be enough. Just one baneling connecting. But still the 1-1 Marines. There's a single Widowmine back here. Again! GuMiho keeps trickling across the map, and it's his turn to go for the 2-base all-in. Rogue still with a mediocre drone count, but he does have that 3rd base. There's just a bunch of barracks puppet out Marines here. It's so stressful. All GuMiho has to do is take mediocre fights. Rogue has to win every fight, because if he loses even one, GuMiho has the momentum and the unit composition. But here we go. A great spread from GuMiho, but that's not necessarily a good thing against Mass Muta. The Marines. Well, another couple Banes. Target fires. Slowly. The Mutas will get it done. And GuMiho continuing forward. Another wave of Lings and Banes. There are no upgrades at all. The Widow Mines are recharging. He comes back for more. He's going to clean up the mine. Overseer taken out. GuMiho once again knocking on the door. A few more banelings will complete. And all it takes... Oh, he knocks out one of his medevacs with his own Widow Mine, but the Mutas... Another wave of Marines! GuMiho has lifted his main base to his 3rd. He's just now landing it. He's backing off. There's banelings on either side, but more are closing in. The Zerglings wrap around. No, GuMiho! What are you doing? No! You son of a... Gooby, no! He misread the situation the entire time. It's like he was speaking a different language. It's so... This is one of the few times, I think, that the analysis and essentially the analysis on the ground is so much different than seeing the observers. Here we see Rogue absolute desperation. He was all in completely for several minutes on Muta Ling. All GuMiho needed to do was not, like, he could sit at his base with his 3rd till he has 50 Marines. But he didn't know that. And this is a poker game situation where Rogue is feigning like, all I need to do is keep the pressure on. No. He needed to do critical damage. And he didn't. And even at the end of the game, when GuMiho tapped out, I don't even think that's GG yet. He has 1-1. He has a 3rd base. He still has a worker lead. Yeah, this fight is bad, and this is demoralizing. And to be honest, it was really mediocre micro against the Banes. But he still has all this production. He still has more workers, and really the upgrades are key. But it seems like he was unconvinced of his own capability. And GuMiho playing bio versus GuMiho the Chad playing mech. I think there's a tiny little part of it that's like, if I can't win with mech, then I don't even want to bother. I don't think that's it, but certainly a painful experience. And Rogue finding the narrow path to victory. And that's why he's the executioner. A heartbreaking / inspiring series, depending on which side you're on. But as a Gumi bro myself, it's tough to watch. Though I'm glad I did. and hopefully it made your day a little bit better as well. If you got the means and motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. Though I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. Thank you to our mule tier patrons. GuMiho could use some more, but Big Jig, Devin, Dor, Kate, Mario, Suit. Special thank you to Humpmaster as well for all the support. But thank you everyone for watching. Good luck, have fun. Make sure to check out this video that Jimmy picked out, unless it sucks. That's Jimmy's fault. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Good luck, have fun. Stay chill. I know.